Good evening. Thanks a lot for staying with us here at CNN News 18. You're watching Nation at 5 with me, Ridhima Bhatnagar. We're coming to you live from the newsroom of CNN News 18. Lots lined up for you over the next 60 minutes. We're beginning this broadcast, though, with the CNN News 18 exclusive. Now we're picking up details of how, as the situation still remains tense and sensitive in Manipur, China and Pakistan are trying to use the situation to their advantage. We're understanding there is a nefarious plan that is at play as far as China and Pakistan is concerned. We're understanding now China and Pakistan could possibly be using Nepal to try and fuel the situation further. As I pointed out, because the situation is still tense in Manipur, the situation still remains sensitive in Manipur, China and Pakistan are up to no good. Intel sources are now revealing to us here at CNN News 18 that China and Pakistan, as I pointed out, are adding fuel to the Manipur crisis. CNN News 18 has also accessed this intel note, and the details that we will just be breaking for our viewers in just a bit, how China wants to take advantage of this region, also of this sensitive time. Let's first break down the details in terms of what is this intel note even revealing to us here at CNN News 18, and then of course we'll also talk to you about what they want to do as far as fueling fire further to this already sensitive situation. Let's break down all those details in terms of what is the role of China and Pakistan and what do they want to gain of a sensitive situation. This is what the intel note is now revealing here on CNN News 18. First, external forces taking advantage of the crisis. As I pointed out, the situation still remains sensitive and tense. China and Pakistan wanting to take an undue advantage of that situation. Charge 2, China trying to push arms and drugs via Myanmar. This is something that we've discussed in the past as well. 3, China and Pakistan allegedly using Nepal as a launch pad. As I pointed out, as a silent launch pad. They're trying to infiltrate terrorists and weapons, trying to use the unrest on the ground. What we also now want to break down is in terms of what do they want to achieve as far as this infiltration bid is concerned. China using Nepalese traders to fund radicals are also part of this intel note. Traders working as Chinese spies in the northeast region. This is also what the intel note is revealing. Chinese markings found on arms that have been recovered so far as well, showing the nefarious plan as far as China and Pakistan is concerned. Now, why is China and Pakistan trying to take an undue advantage of what is happening in Manipur? How are they planning to target Manipur and also using Manipur? Let's break down those details as well. There is connectivity to other South Asian countries as well. So if they're able to enter through what's happening in Manipur, then they get access to other areas as well. The second is several infra and rail development projects, so they get access to that as well. The third is there is an aim to create another Kashmir-like situation. This is something that we've spoken time and again. The peace and normalcy in Kashmir has of course ruffled a lot of feathers across the border. The third is aim to create another Kashmir-like situation, as I pointed out, and that is why they want to target Manipur today and take an undue advantage of the unrest that still continues. Let's also try and bring our colleague Anand also in the conversation to try and understand the modus operandi, what they aim to achieve, and more importantly, what are the other details that are now emerging from this intel note. Anand, as we pointed out to our viewers, this is not the first time that we're reporting stories, but what is it that China and Pakistan wants to do of the Myanmar situation as far as the nefarious plan is concerned?
Well, there is a history to this. It's also chronicled back till 1971 that the Chinese were interested in helping the Pakistanis with military planes and also with war chests at that time, so that they could seal off all of the northeastern part of our country and sever it away from India. So India would have ended at West Bengal at that point in time, and anything beyond that would be either with Pakistan or become East Pakistan, and thereafter all the other northeastern regions will get into Chinese control. The other aspect one need to understand is that there is also the ethnic strife. There is a lot that's happening in Myanmar which is having a direct bearing on what is happening in Manipur. So because of the entire Chin state fights, which are civil war situation, the military junta losing control and the Chin state itself and the Chin National Army taking control, there are a lot of tribes who are also moving away. The last 2 years of civil war in Myanmar has led to a lot of the cookies who are now coming into the Indian part side, that is the Manipur area.
Yeah.
They're inhabiting the hills. With them have come arms, with them have come drugs.
Yeah.
So this entire increase in the acreage of poppy fields has also happened by about 2015 onwards. I was having a chat with Lieutenant General Abhay Krishna, and he's also served there.
Yeah.
So he had some very interesting points to make, that we need to consider that there could be an interest for China and Pakistan to try and flush those routes, but that's an important trade route connect. Now, there is also the possibility that India is also invested there, because we are looking at the More project. Via More, we are looking at the transnational project where we are planning to connect India, Manipur, India, Myanmar, and then Thailand. So, billions of dollars which are now invested in that project. So, that gets affected. This trade route is also important for the Chinese who get access towards Chittagong.
Yeah.
But more importantly, there could be other entities too. There could be Western entities who are actually using using this market and consuming the poppy that's being raised here to fuel their pharmaceutical industry there. So that is another dynamic which is there. So all of this means that there are vested entities who want that area to be in a flux.
Yeah.
China for long has nurtured this because it's part of its overall Belt and Road project, the OBOR project. It wants to dominate. It claims Arunachal Pradesh. We know the instance that they wanted to give staple visa to our athletes. Because they want to take control of that entire region. There are other entities who believe that there are rich uranium, thorium deposits also in Manipur, Mizoram and Meghalaya. So they want that area to be under their control. And of course, what is happening in Myanmar between the military junta controlled by the Chinese. Who's funding the Chin state? What kind of weaponry is coming there? Yes, there are Chinese arms and ammunition here, but are there American weapons systems which are also there with some of the other parties who are part of that civil war? These dynamics make this whole thing in the flux very concerning. More importantly, is this just the beginning of a lot more of trouble that Northeast could witness?
That's exactly
and are we
what
wise?
I wanted to understand. There are two things here. One, of course, there is a larger pattern at play because they want the unrest because they want to take advantage of it. We've seen something similar play out in Kashmir. There's possibly something similar that's playing out. The second part is, what is the role of Nepal? Why are they using Nepal as the silent launch pad when they want to push either drugs or arms across the border?
See, Nepal as a nation finds itself sandwiched, right? It's sandwiched with Chinese occupied territory on the one hand and the Chinese influence of the PLA. On the other hand, you have India, who's always been a friend. Then they have also got porous borders with Sikkim and Bangladesh. So they have infiltration there, and then there is always this entire route, the Nepal route, being used by the Pakistanis because they find their entry via the POK, POJK regions, and then they come into Nepal, or direct access from Pakistan into Nepal, which happens. So Nepal then becomes a hotbed. A lot of it, the Nepalese establishment itself does not know who's working where and what's happening, because there are huge, it's not about 5-10 kilometers of open porous borders. It's more than hundreds into thousands of kilometers, all the way from Uttarakhand, Uttarachal, all the way into Sikkim. That the borders are porous. So entry, egress and all of that becomes very easy for people to operate out of. And Nepal is also far-flung. Lot of areas are totally isolated, desolated areas. So there for people to pitch camp and to conduct their operations becomes very easy. You cannot blame the Nepalese government for it, because the system can only handle that much. And all of the Northeast for a lot of time had been neglected. So people had a free run. It's only now that the connection is happening, the understanding is happening. So it's a process. But more importantly, those who are understand and identify with India, if they wake up to this and then they call out this kind of a game which is happening, then perhaps we have a solution in sight. But we have to be clear that beyond the ethnic strife, there are entities which are deliberately stoking it too.
Anand, we'll have to leave that conversation there. Thanks a lot for getting us all those details, crucial points that he's made to try and understand the larger pattern that is now emerging as well. Let's also bring in our guest who's been patiently waiting. We have retired Major General Sanjay Mehta, who's a defense expert, also now joining us. Sir, appreciate you taking out the time and joining us here on CNN News 18, and thank you for patiently waiting as well. We've put out some very concerning details as far as the intel note is concerned, that even at a time when the situation in Manipur remains tense, remains on the edge, remains sensitive, there are elements that are trying to take an undue advantage of it. And who are these elements? On expected lines, China and Pakistan.
Rithvi, good evening. Absolutely, the intel report which you have just highlighted, the first statement itself is extremely important, exploiting the current situation in Manipur. And the enemy is gaining advantage of the current situation. Number two, they are also stating the intel inputs that obviously they'll be inducting large number of pumping in large number of arms and of course drugs. So this is the game plan, and the present crisis actually suits both China and Pakistan, especially China. I go way back to 82. I was deployed in the same area as a second lieutenant. I remember the Indian army was badly sucked in into all these areas of Manipur, Nagaland, having operated in Ukhrul and the Manipur Valley, and of course in Nagaland, Mon, and all these areas. So we had large number of ambushes. Our army suffered heavy casualties. But since then, things have changed. There has been a fair amount of peace, and therefore we do understand that the primary enemy of India is obviously China and Pakistan. So our focus of the army has to be totally
Yeah.
on the borders, and therefore all the troops which are deployed in Manipur, our primary operational role is in the northern borders with China.
True.
And if tomorrow the situation spirals out of control, this will have national security repercussions, because per se Indian army majority of the troops will get deployed here in Manipur
Yeah.
and maybe further in Nagaland hills. And if this happens, it suits China the best, because
True.
operationally we will not be deployed, and therefore they can escalate the situation in the LAC at their own sweet will, and this is the larger game plan. So today
Yeah.
the country has to, and I'm very glad that even Anand highlighted, we need to wake up. It's a wake up call for the country before
Yeah.
it becomes too late. So this is what I would like to highlight, and we have
Yeah.
to really look for solutions. Otherwise, it is not in the national security interest Indian army getting sucked into here. And right
True.
now, even Indian army has limitations here. Firstly, ASPA
Yeah.
is not there. We are just on aid to
So,
civil
considering
authorities.
the fact that
Yeah.
you've served in the area, I just want to understand location-wise, geographically speaking, there is a very intended reason as to why China and Pakistan are even targeting Manipur as to what they can achieve by getting an access to Manipur. One of the reasons is not just the infra and development projects, but it also the access that they get to other South Asian countries, and that is why that entry to Manipur becomes very crucial. What is the solution to ensure that this entry itself is barred?
Yeah, very true. Firstly, we are aware that the entire northeast, and especially from the Siliguri corridor where I commanded
Yeah.
my brigade in Nathula, down below the Siliguri corridor, this area is very, very sensitive, and these areas have been insurgency prone for so many years. We
Yeah.
are aware of the fact, and a lot of things have been done very, very nicely, to the extent we have the Bodoland Territorial Council. So many issues have happened,
True.
and of late also the government of India is perhaps examining the Eastern Nagaland People's Organization demand for a separate frontier Eastern Nagaland called of a territorial council. So a lot of positive steps have been taken, because this solution is a political one. But otherwise, the Chinese aim and intent is very clear. They want to, actually their long-term strategy is to cut off the northeast, because the
Yeah.
vulnerability of Siliguri corridor, and create an insurgency-like situation in the entire northeast, and thereafter also connect to Bangladesh and further south, and they'll foment trouble, including in Bangladesh. So the Kashmir-like situation, which we just highlighted, this is their aim, and therefore to ward it off, I think I would be very candid in saying it has got national security concerns, and therefore the top priority for the country and the people of this country,
Yeah.
including the Manipur government, is to solve the crisis politically. If it is
Yeah.
not solved, then it is going to spiral out of control, and the
True.
Indian army per se will get sucked into this operation, because the hill areas. Since you mentioned I've served here, the hill areas of Manipur and Nagaland and adjacent Mizoram, they're all contiguous, and the terrain is so thick, jungles. Operation is very, very difficult, and it's a porous border. So Myanmar,
Okay.
through Myanmar, China will be doing the needful.
Yeah.
So if it is not solved politically, this
Yeah.
is going to escalate, and I think this is the time we need to wake up. It's a wake-up
Yeah.
call. Otherwise, it will be too late. And tomorrow, then China will also start escalating
True.
things on the line of actual control. We'll not have our troops, soldiers deployed there, because we'll be battling our own people in
True.
the area of Manipur. This is what my belief is.
I agree with the point when you said that we need a political solution before the story actually spirals out of control. I just want to go back for another crucial point as far as what we put out from the findings of the intel note is the kind of local support that China and Chinese spies are getting. The intel note also reveals that there are many traders who disguise themselves as traders but are originally Chinese spies who are working in and around the northeast region. What is the kind of crackdown that is ensured to ensure that these people working as spies can be caught at the earliest?
Yeah, very true. Firstly, the border securing is a very, very important task because recently, if you see that Pakistani lady, Seema, walked into with her 4 children unchecked,
Yeah.
and a lot of TV channels had been to the Indo-Nepal border, and it was
True.
reported what laxity was there by the SSB deployed there, the Seema Suraksha Bal, the SS Seema Bal. So,
Yeah.
this is the whole problem over there. And including in the northeast, though the
Okay.
border guarding is the responsibility of the Assam Rifles, but the terrain is
Sure.
too thick, and we have limited resources. In fact, the
Yeah.
focus now should be in terms of not only human surveillance. We have to have our own intelligence agencies gearing up, and
True.
surveillance equipment has to be deployed because spying, etc. now is going to be order of the day. In fact, today
True.
also, if you read
Yeah.
in the today's Times of India, it was very, very clearly China is today sending their spies all over the world, and they
Yeah.
have a separate organization. So we have to be very,
So, an
very careful.
urgent solution is the need of the hour before this entire story spirals out of control. Major General, unfortunately, I will have to leave that conversation there. Always a pleasure speaking to you.